So what exactly did Jeff Sessions know about any outreach between the Trump team and Russia? Here's what he said last month.
You don't believe that surrogates from the Trump campaign had communications with the Russians. Is that what you're saying?
I did not, and I'm not aware of anyone else that did.
Since then, it has been revealed that former Trump campaign advisor George Papadopoulos met with some Russians and was seated at the table with Jeff Sessions and then-candidate Trump when he suggested he could coordinate a meeting between Trump and President Putin. In yesterday's testimony, Sessions told lawmakers he at first had no recollection of that March 2016 meeting with Papadopoulos. There he is, until he saw news reports about it.
I would like to address the false charges made about my previous testimony. My answers have not changed. I've always told the truth, and I have answered every question as I understood them to the best of my recollection, as I will continue to do today. I do now recall that the March 2016 meeting at the Trump Hotel that Mr. Papadopoulos attended, but I have no clear recollection of the details of what he said at that meeting. After reading his account and to the best of my recollection, I believe that I wanted to make clear to him that he was not authorized to represent the campaign with the Russian government or any other foreign government for that matter. But I did not recall this event, which occurred 18 months before my testimony of a few weeks ago.
Clint, if I'm investigating or if I'm on a presidential campaign and a kid comes up to me and says, I want to go to Russia, I would say, why don't you just go home instead and take a cold shower and call me in the morning? I'm not exactly sure how you forget that.
I don't understand the whole context for connecting with Russia. When I look through the Papadopoulos scenario, why was one of the first actions of this campaign he believed he was there to establish a relationship with Russia. I see no evidence of any other country that they wanted to be this aggressive with. And Sessions can't recall someone saying, maybe we want to set up a meeting with Vladimir Putin. I would think this would be something that would stick out in your mind. And when you're going to testify repeatedly about this issue, you might want to go back through your records. Being the Attorney General, we tend to stick to evidence and go through records and find that. I can't understand why this comes back to haunt him. Now, I realize, I try and give him the benefit of the doubt. This is a chaotic campaign. These principals go into lots of meetings with people they don't know.
Right.
But we've been through this 3 times now, I believe, on the Senate floor, and it just keeps coming back, and every time there's more to talk about.
They keep forgetting. And Casey, this is a guy that we were told time and time again was flying around the country with Donald Trump because he kept him calm. He kept him reasoned. He kept him rational. You have Don Jr. Communicating with his father. We're looking at this timeline that's getting more and more bunched up with more and more events regarding Russia. And it becomes less and less possible to accept the testimony of these Trump administration officials saying that they just didn't remember this or that about meetings with Russians.
Less possible and also less plausible, right? Mm-hmm. The timeline that has been filled in by media organizations. I mean, between Bob Mueller and the Washington Post and the New York Times, there are suddenly a lot of things that seem to have come to the forefront of a lot of people's memories in this particular instance. And I do think we were focusing in on Papadopoulos a little bit. I have spoken to J.D. Gordon, who was sitting in between those two men. There were formal requests that were filed. Gordon says, he claims he stopped those requests and that Papadopoulos then went over his head to other officials. So, the idea that they're downplaying Papadopoulos in such an aggressive way, I think that the facts have since borne out that the reality is a little different.
And Casey, I was debating somebody about this yesterday that was saying, oh, he was just he was a low-ranking official. Well, at the time that request was made, Donald Trump was saying he was one of his 2 foreign policy advisors, which goes back to the fact that this was such a mom and pop operation without the mom, that everybody knew everybody there. There was no campaign infrastructure at this point. And Donald Trump told the Washington Post, Carter Page and George Papadopoulos were my 2 foreign policy advisors.
Well, and they keep dismissing him, too, as a young foreign policy volunteer. I mean, he was 30 years old. How old was Jared Kushner during the campaign? 35, 36? I mean,
and he was going to solve peace in the Middle East.
And still is, right? So I just, you know, I think that's, there's some real questions about that in my mind. And don't forget, too, I mean, Sessions is, what a fascinating moment if you're Jeff Sessions, between what's going on. I mean, the pushback that he gave, I thought was remarkable, considering by all accounts, he is somebody who wants to keep his job as Attorney General. Mitch McConnell is in another one of his years trying to say, hey, maybe you actually want to go back to that Senate seat in Alabama that you vacated. The decision-making here from him, I think, is at very much at a significant pivot point.
Hey, Mike, there also is for people that want justice to be served and want the Mueller investigation to run its course, it gets a little confusing at times, right? Are you rooting for Sessions to survive? I mean, he's not telling the truth. It doesn't seem like he's telling the truth. But Donald Trump would love an excuse to get rid of Jeff Sessions, because Jeff Sessions actually, as you said, it was noble yesterday, also showed a great deal of character when he recused himself, despite the fact Donald Trump had no respect for the law and wanted him to stay in there.
You know, and there are 2 threads to this story that's playing out right in front of our eyes, and part of it played out yesterday. You alluded to one of the threads. The campaign was a total clown show.
It was.
A total clown show where very few people, if any, believed that they were going to win right up and through, including Election Day. That's the amusing part.
They were using the campaign to set up future business deals in Russia,
a money
specifically.
Deal, a money deal. The tragic aspect of that thread is that many people who participated in the clown show, who were total clowns, are now part of the government of the United States of America. That's the tragic part.
Well, and if they're
Yesterday we talked about the 36-year-old who you wouldn't hire to preside over a house closing.
Exactly.
He's going to be a federal judge for life.
Federal judge, and you have this Papadopoulos. I mean, both my brothers are in the foreign policy community. Obviously, my father.
Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.